And it's the first show of February. And what does that mean, Rufaro?
Back on the source. It's a fantastic time to be back.
You actually made it through the month.
I did. I have more discipline than you, clearly.
To my shame.
It was really pleasant seeing you sober, I must say.
Pleasant for who?
For some of us.
Well, thanks for joining us. We're back here trying to fix the world's problems, talking about things that we don't know anything about. And, generally just kind of fueling our friendship, if you like. Not sure it's something that is actually desirable. But anyway, we do it. Mukanya, what are you having today?
Okay, so...
What? You dress like a normal person. What's the occasion?
I don't know what that means, but...
You got normal clothes.
And usually?
Yeah, you don't... usually you look like you just... somebody dropped you off from a costume party.
Costume party. Well, look at you. I think being sartorial is very important, and I've been trying to introduce you guys to the other side of town, but it's been very difficult, but I hope that one day you will get it. But yeah.
Yeah, just like we try and introduce you to our side of town.
Yes.
Yeah.
Although
it's a very difficult proposition.
I must commend you for having a lot more interesting things happening.
Yes, what's all this paraphernalia?
Oh my
Okay,
gosh.
so I was off sugar for a while. I think more than 3 months. So this is my
We didn't
introduction.
notice.
Yeah, well, do you notice anything outside of alcohol?
No.
Not really. No.
Well, there you go. But yeah, so this is my introduction to sugar. And yeah, I thought I do it with Malawi Shandy.
Must we brace ourselves?
Please do. When I'm high on sugar, you know what happens. I'm
bounce
like my
off the
son.
walls.
So you're gonna?
I'm gonna make it for those who are interested in making their own Malawi Shandy. So it's lemonade and ginger ale and lots of ice. And this is how you pour it. There we go.
At this
A
point, it
torch?
actually looks like a good drink.
No, it is. A total mazoe or 2. For me, I love mazoe, so it's 2.
I have a feeling that's gonna spoil it.
No, it doesn't. Ask everybody who's had this.
Well, look at it now; it's yellow.
So
Gonna
you
make
get
it
the
even
color.
more yellow?
It's a politically incorrect color.
Oh, it's even more yellow. Oh,
You get the colors going. Do you mind passing the beaters? So I'm gonna have
I'm
mine.
getting the heebie-jeebies just looking at it.
Well,
And then now it
this
turns
gives you the
pink.
color. Exactly, you have all sorts of colors from the base right through to the top. And I'm gonna have mine. So ordinarily you want to stir it, but I'm gonna have mine shaken,
Not stirred.
not stirred.
Okay, 007. Rufaro, what are you having?
Well, it seems I might be having the most boring drink on the show today. I am easing back into the sauce, so I'm having a light beer. Local production, Pilsner. Can't go wrong with that.
I've got a cousin who's got a Pilsner joke.
Okay, let's hear it.
He says, I've given up drinking. I'm just having Pilsner.
Well, it's close to the mark.
And since this is a gift from you, sir, you might want to talk about what I'm having.
Well, yeah, Bushmills is one of the oldest distilleries in the world. The Irish like to triple distill their whiskey, and that is the original version. And I've gone a step further and got you some spherical artisanal ice. So
Yes,
hopefully
I don't know if the cameras pick it up. I actually have ice balls.
I don't think that sounds right.
Tinashe missed it. As they say these days on social media, if you don't get it, forget about it.
Yeah, no, I'm just wondering why you would have sartorial ice and not sartorial dress.
You don't drink your dress?
Yes, that's a good point.
Anyway, gentlemen.
It's wasted. The
So-
aesthetics is wasted. In my words.
Anyway, gents, this week, a lot has happened. Bank workers have joined civil servants in demanding US dollar salaries, and they want their salaries to go back to 2018 levels. Is this feasible? Does it make sense? Is it correct?
They should make a time machine and go back to 2018. But look, from where I'm sitting, I don't think it makes sense. I think the economy today in 2018 is very different. And I think that that level of remuneration doesn't make sense in the context of where we are today. And it probably, if we're objective, didn't make sense in 2018 structurally. So, I don't think it's reasonable. And I think that it's going to fall flat on its face.
Well, maybe they mean at the auction rate.
No, they want US dollars.
They don't want to get the Zim dollar equivalent of 900. They want to get $900.
Yeah, well, as far as they're concerned, if everybody's been given money at the auction, why can't they get their money and their salaries from the auction?
No, but that's not what they're asking for. Let's be clear. What they want is $900.
I'm saying they're making a subtle argument that you may have missed.
I don't think there's anything subtle about their argument.
I don't think they care if it comes from auction or not.
Yeah, exactly.
They want their
I'm saying,
$900.
If others are getting money from the auction at subsidized rate, why can't they?
No, but it's not others. It's everybody. Everybody can access $50 a week. Auction rate,
So
right?
can they? But
So can they, yeah.
But the question is, does it make sense for the lowest paid bank employee to be earning $900 in a country like ours?
It's not for us to argue. This is just them. It's what do you term it collective bargaining. That's what it is. It's just collective bargaining. Do they deserve? Which is a different argument. Do they deserve to be
But you
earning?
didn't use moral terms like deserve.
Is deserve a moral term?
Yes.
Is deserve a moral term?
Okay, let's not
Okay.
get into
So we need to
whether
get back
deserve
to our English.
is a moral or non-moral term.
Yeah,
But you must have an opinion.
Yes, I do. I do have.
And what's your opinion?
An opinion.
If you were running a
And-
bank today, because you've been a banker and you understand
It's
banking.
collective bargaining.
No, no,
You
no,
can't
no, no.
argue. You can't argue whether their argument is valid or not. But what you can argue, because there are certain banks that will be able to afford that. If you were at Goldman Sachs, I'm sure
Really?
somebody.
Are you
I'm sure
using
somebody-
Goldman
I
Sachs
think you should
as an example?
You should go back to pink
For
trousers
Zim?
and
Yeah.
tea.
No. I don't know why you guys are making such a. This is more a political argument. If we are looking at the whole ethos of collective bargaining,
nothing-
The whole ethos of collective bargaining is if somebody can come to you as a collective and argue
so he's
that
finding-
their
There's
nothing
salary
political about this.
and their salary should
He's finding
be.
a politically correct way of saying they're crazy.
No, I'm not saying they're crazy, but I'm saying the ethos and the rules of collective bargaining they can say 900, and you are trying to argue that we should be on the other side of
No,
the
no, no,
collective
no,
bargaining.
look,
Because what if it ends up being at 400?
I'm
Because
expressing my
it's
opinion.
negotiated, right?
We're having a drink.
This is-
We're having a drink. And
this
talking
is a
about-
negotiated.
And we have an opinion. I think $900
This
bucks is crazy. What do you think it is?
And I am saying I contextualize the $900.
And you have an opinion. At the end of contextualizing, you have an opinion.
The important thing is to contextualize the $900.
Yes,
and
and
say
what
that this is somebody who's collective bargaining, and I think that a
Do you
job
think
is
it's
more
reasonable?
important.
Okay.
A job is more
Okay,
You're
important.
not answering the
You guys
question.
are going down a rabbit hole. But while we talk,
Because I'm not giving you the answer that you require.
While we're talking about US dollars and whether the economy should be using US dollars or not, it's said that this week or recently, Nigel Chanakira hosted a bunch of CEOs and asked them if they were willing to use the local currency. How many do you think put up their hands?
Well, I know the answer. So
Apparently there were 100 CEOs, or over 100, and one guy put up his hand and said he's willing to use a local currency. Guess what he's the CEO of?
By Zimbabwe.
So
And this is
literally,
true to his job.
literally, the rest of the CEOs are saying, "Well, thank you very much. It's been a good experiment. Let's try something else." So, where do you think Mtuli and JPM are coming from with this insistence that we should use the Zim dollar?
Well, I think What the CEOs are just telling us is what everybody knows. So this is now an open secret, and you're far better off keeping your money under the mattress than in the monetary system, because you have a dollar, a Zimbabwean dollar, that has lost 96% of its value in the last 2 years. So why would anyone keep that? I think they're just being honest and saying, why would anyone?
No, but why is the governor and the Ministry of Finance?
Because
Why are they standing in their own corner against the rest of humanity?
again, contextualizing, they're not standing against, they're standing for the whole idea of fiat, because the person who benefits most from fiat is the government. So why would the government reject its own currency? Because they benefit the most from it.
But they do reject their own currency.
Disagree with you.
Try paying your import duties in Zim dollars.
No, that's when they're collecting taxes, right? But when they're printing and paying your salary.
Explain that again slowly.
No, but,
So-
but I actually think that that's a false narrative. This idea, I think that it's absolutely true that they've expressed an interest in generating revenue in US dollars instead of Zim dollars. So for the example that George used, for import taxes, for example, they would much rather receive them in US dollars than Zim dollars. But that doesn't make it true that they would be better off with the Zim dollar. They would be better. It doesn't make it true that they would be better off if the Zim dollar wasn't doing well.
They benefit. I
I'm
didn't say.
confused. What are you saying?
Okay, I get what he's trying to say, but maybe let me put it.
Maybe explain it to me.
Okay. So
So if they engendered confidence in the dollar,
Which one?
the Zim dollar,
the Zim dollar.
they would be better off.
They're better off because of inflation. If they borrowed in Zim dollars today, by next year, that debt is absolutely nothing. But they got value, real value today with something. That's the value of printing. Seigniorage. They call it seigniorage, but that's the value of printing.
But it's not
The entire
sustainable.
society, the entire society is worse off. But
And you
the
don't get
government
significant
is-
foreign investment. But if the issue of the local currency was disciplined about the way that about money supply growth, and people were confident in the local currency, you would have a lot of foreign direct investment, and you'd have strong economic growth, and they would actually be better off.
And you
So I don't.
And
so,
you'll be
so
the
I
only
don't.
government in the world that actually believes in that. So that's just how impossible it is in today's life of fiat. But to ask you a direct question and to make this point very loud and clear for everybody, we collect 3 billion in taxes, right? So Zimro collects, and this is using
3 billion
the real
US
value.
dollars.
US dollars, using the real value of money. And of that, about 600 million is real hard USD. So the rest is Zim dollars that we've just converted at whatever the going price is. So if you're Mtuli or if you're whoever, you look at that and you look at the government's needs. The government's needs, it spends close to about 6 billion a year. Now, part of it is driven
Well,
by...
no, it spends more. On the fiscus, they spend 6 billion.
Yeah, that's what I've adjusted for that. That actually on the fiscus they spend about 4, but you've got donors who then come in with about 850. That somewhat helps, and then part of it is this money illusion that they play with. So, for example, they're better off paying salaries in Zim dollars, right? And then when you then have the collective bargaining, they use an inflation rate of 60%, which we know is not the real inflation rate.
No. The Zimstats guys went with clipboards to OK and they got these prices.
So the person who's benefiting,
I think the Zimstats numbers are accurate, but they probably aren't
the
forward-looking.
basket. Or the basket is problematic, as Temper said. But the point I'm trying to make is the guy who's benefiting is actually the government. It's because they only have 600 million. If you really stretch it, let's call it 800 million that they collect in US dollar cash. Can they run a government with 800 million?
That's a lot of money. That's a little bit shy of the entire national budget of the Rwandan government.
That's good. That's a good one. But we don't have the Rwandan appetite. Our government has huge appetite. We're not as skinny as the Rwandese.
You're going to get into trouble for that.
Okay. And just before, while we're talking about this cultural currency absurdities, ZSE has pledged to help PPC and Old Mutual resume trading. You're a broker. Can you unpack this?
Well, it's actually
The
not-
exchange delisted them. Then the exchange says, we're going to help you come back. What does that mean?
Well, to be fair to the ZSE, what you're saying is not actually correct.
Correct it, please.
The exchange stopped trading in PPC and Old Mutual on direction from the Ministry of Finance. So it's not like the exchange woke up one day and had an epiphany and decided that our country would be better off without the listing of Old Mutual and PPC. That directive actually came from the Ministry of Finance. So the ZSC has always been for the listing and trading of Old Mutual and PPC. So nothing really from their perspective has changed. They're engaging and pushing and lobbying for the trading of Old Mutual and PPC. So I think the headline there is a bit disingenuous, and I think
But the exchange said it.
they announced it, but why? Where did the directive ultimately come from?
Okay, so they're going to try and help these things get relisted. Meanwhile, if you've got Old Mutual shares and your kid needs university fees, what do you do?
You're in trouble. You don't own a tradable instrument. So as far as your bankers and your creditors are concerned, you don't have an asset.
But I spent money on. Okay, anyway, I am going to go and play with my ice balls. You need to go and visit the little boys' room. We'll be back in a couple of minutes. Welcome back. With all this talk about US dollars, earning US dollars or not, and so on, in the global context, there's talk about global inflation, which at least the two of us interpret to mean US dollar inflation. You've got a slightly different view to it.
As with everything.
Yeah. Do you want US dollars? In this week, the world's biggest wealth fund manager was in the news saying inflation is a bit of a permanent thing. It's going to be with us for a while to come. So do you want US dollars? What should we be doing as people, as a nation, in this new world?
Well, because there's inflation in the world.
Yes.
But you're conflicting the two issues, right? There's the value or inflation within the US economy, inflation on the dollar, and then there's the price relativity between the dollar and all other currencies. So unless
Those
you're
are
saying
three things.
two things. What did I say?
Inflation
In
the US, inflation in the dollar.
No, that's the same thing.
Last week you said the word, but anyway.
No. Inflation in the US and inflation on the dollar is the same thing. It's debasement. Inflation is debasement of the dollar, the value of the dollar within the US. Then there's the relative value of the US compared to other currencies. So unless you are into gold, so unless you say, you know what, I'm actually rejecting the US dollar and I'm rejecting the value of the dollar within the US economy, then you go into gold. And I think that's a perfectly reasonable argument. But it's not a reasonable argument for someone in Zimbabwe to say I'm rejecting the US dollar, because the US dollar is actually, and correct me if I'm wrong, was actually one of the best performing currency.
Yeah,
compared to-
the US dollar index is up. So
It's
basically,
actually up,
relative to
but
everybody
that's
else
in the past.
in the world, the Americans
Have lost less.
print less.
they print less than everybody else. So you're better off if you're in the international market. It's the international reserve currency. You're better off holding US dollars.
But should you even be holding money at all?
Yes.
To transact. But I think as an investment,
Not just to transact.
you're better off holding non-monetary assets.
Well, and this is your. I thought you would speak more to this. I think generally a lot more people are risk averse than they are prone to risk taking. So unless you are,
So they're stuck. But
not
the
that
rest,
they're
the rest of
stuck.
us who are a bit more
they
open-minded.
would balance their. What they tend to do is balance their cash holdings. So you could borrow, for example, if you
How
want
would anybody who's risk averse decide that it's clever to borrow?
No, you hedge because you're in the international market, right? You want the US dollar as a reserve currency, but you're afraid that the US dollar is losing its value. So you just borrow, right?
And
So
do what with your borrowings? And in what currency do you borrow?
you borrow in US dollar. That's if okay, you
borrow US dollar and buy non-monetary assets.
and buy non-monetary assets.
So you can
That
even
you believe will outperform the dollar.
who will not outperform but preserve the value.
Okay.
So
you can
borrow
actually achieve
US dollar and you keep gold.
You can
buy
actually achieve
gold.
that without even borrowing. If you have the cash, you can just deploy it in non-monetary assets.
Because borrowing comes with an interest cost.
Course, yeah.
Whereas, deploying savings does
Fair
not.
enough. Fair enough.
So, and that's something that most people can do, right? Because there's a wide range of non-monetary assets.
Absolutely.
From actually having gold bars to just buying a bottle of whiskey and holding it for
So
a
you
couple
know
of
what the curious
I
thing,
like that idea.
do you know what the curious thing? What's the monetary denominator? What's the accounting currency? You know that.
The US dollar.
Exactly. So that's why the US dollar will always dominate.
No. If there's going to be, and if you read what this fund manager was saying, basically there's going to be inflation. So commodity prices are actually going to rise in US dollars. So if you have the ability to invest in a commodity or, something close to a commodity in US dollars, then value is going to go up.
I wouldn't. If you're a buccaneer, if you're a trader, yeah, you would go with that. But if you just want to preserve your value, all you're interested in is you're saying, I've got a dollar,
No,
a US dollar.
Tinashe, sometimes you overcomplicate things.
No, he's pedantic.
No, he's
He's the one who's actually complicating things.
No, Tinashe, if you've got a certain amount of money today in dollars, with the way the world is going, would you buy the same amount of whiskey in
You
3
wouldn't
years'
buy any
time
whiskey.
with
That's
the
a
same
bad
amount of money?
example.
You just buy gold. You wouldn't go into other commodities.
No, not as an investment. I'm saying, if you did nothing and you held on to your US dollars, would you buy the same number of lemonades with your US dollars in 3
No,
years'
you
time?
wouldn't.
And that's what we're talking about.
No, you're actually saying because you're going to buy whiskey in 3 years' time, you're better off buying other commodities.
No, that's not what I'm saying.
That's exactly what you say.
No, that's not what he's
I'm
saying.
Okay, so what are you saying?
Clearly, and you're the one who hasn't been drinking.
Okay,
My
so
gosh.
no more sugar
what
for
are you
you.
saying? What are you saying?
Maybe we should ask somebody to get you some
Okay,
pink
so
pants.
what are you saying? You've got US dollars. What
So
should you
if
do?
you go into a non-monetary commodity, the non-monetary commodity will keep
What
up
is a
with
non-monetary commodity?
Gold is a good example.
Yeah.
a house, whatever.
So that's you're taking risk, right?
And risk is not a bad thing.
Well, you're the economist, and
Yeah.
you should be telling us.
And I'm
that-
saying that for a lot of people, they're not interested in taking any kind
Okay,
of
but
risk.
we're talking about what they
They
should
want to
do.
be. They want to be
We're
risk
talking about-
neutral.
We're talking about what they should do.
Yeah. What should they do to remain risk neutral?
You know what risk neutral means?
being alive is a risk. Okay, so
These are buccaneers, and this is the problem. The problem with living in
this idea
Zimbabwe for
just-
so long.
this idea
is
of going
we
through
become-
life risk neutral.
What does risk neutral even mean?
What does it mean? Does it mean never coming out of your room
No, it doesn't
because you
mean
could
that.
get hit by a bus?
It
What does
doesn't
it
mean that. It means that you're not taking any
Addi-
more
additional risk.
additional risk than you need.
So
to.
you
and
said-
you're saying
So if you're
buying
earning in a
commodities-
fiat currency, are you not taking risk? Earning in a
What-
currency
what
that
is-
can.
in fact, that's exactly what he's saying. He's saying, if you're sitting there and your salary is losing value every day, just sit there because anything you do will be risk.
That's
You've got
actually
bad
not what I'm
options
saying. That's not
with
what
fiat,
I'm saying.
with fiat currencies.
And
So
what I'm
you-
saying is, if we're here and we know the nature of most people, and you're saying that, oh, buy gold or buy oil or buy whatever, what happens when
I'm saying buy a house.
or
build a cottage.
And what happens? We've been through 2008 when house prices actually crash. Then what are you going to do?
If you had a house, you were better off than if you didn't.
But housing prices crash.
But you were better
Right?
off than
In
someone
2008, who was better off in 2008?
There was no inflation. Oh, you mean globally?
Yeah,
Not
globally.
in-
Because that's what
globally,
we're
there was
talking
no
about.
inflation.
We're talking about globally what
There was no
happened.
inflation globally in 2008.
Any asset you buy, you're taking a risk. So internationally, whatever the fund manager is saying, I'm not saying whether they're right or wrong, but I'm just saying that they must contextualize and tell people that what we're telling you to do, whatever we're telling you to do, is actually risky because there is
So what is risk neutral? Seeing as you've defined what most people want, what is actually risk neutral
lose
in
value.
life?
To lose value.
no.
Yeah, let him answer.
Okay.
I'm very keen
So-
to hear his response to this.
I think this guy should stop drinking sugar.
Okay, so the first thing is government bond. So
is risk neutral.
It's-
in which currency? Should we be
it's-
telling people to buy
dollars-
Zimbabwean treasury bonds?
No. I think we're talking about internationally, right?
Okay.
We haven't even come down
Didn't
to
you
some-
just at
We didn't
length,
even come
Didn't
back
you
to
just
Zim.
at length explain the principle of seigniorage?
So US inflation last
Yes.
month was 7%.
7%, yeah.
What's the interest rate on a 10-year US treasury?
1.6, 1.7.
So are you not losing money if you
are,
buy treasuries?
But you are risk neutral. You're better off.
you are. We need to move on. We need to...
Let's talk about Kotko.
Yeah.
So Kotko.
No, it's okay.
No,
It's
sorry,
okay.
sorry.
So on a risk.
No, it's actually- it's
We're
okay.
talking about
I don't
Kotko
know why,
now.
I don't know why I need to be lecturing you guys on simple things.
No, it's okay. No, so drink your pink drink or orange or whatever. color it is.
No. I will insist on this one because you guys are
Okay.
It's quite
We'll
problematic.
we'll have a rabbit hole on this.
No,
but
not
we'll move
even.
on to Kotko.
Not
Yes,
even.
this
every
evening.
risk, every time you take risk,
Tinashe,
it's
this-
a question of the
this-
amount of risk you're taking and the return, right? And you might be losing today on a 10-year, right? But over the next 10 years, you're far better off doing that than buying a commodity that has higher volatility.
Tinashe,
So at a
Tinashe,
value at
this-
risk,
this
you're
evening-
actually in a riskier asset in a commodity
Tinashe,
than buying
Tinashe,
TBs.
This evening
And
we'll
most
do a
people-
rabbit hole on
Most
this.
people would actually prefer just buying TBs, and while they're losing in the short term, you've already seen the spike in the 10-year yield. It's not like they're remaining.
Yeah,
at
where is it
1.6.
right now? Where is it right now?
It's at 1.6, but it's moved from 1.2. It's
That's a
moved from
spike.
1.2.
It's a whole spike.
From
Compared to
1.2
7%.
And then
from
infla- and then-
1.2
and
to
inflation-
1.6.
and inflation is
Okay,
way.
no,
Over a
he's
10-year
basing us into
period.
this discussion. We're gonna do a rabbit hole on it, Tinashe.
For
And we'll-
over a 10-year period.
Tinashe, we must
Are you
move.
saying
Okay,
that
we are
the
shutting this down.
10-year
We're gonna have
yield
to move on.
will remain at 1.6?
We have to move on, Tinashe.
Over a 10-year period.
We'll do.
And you would rather advise people to
Tinashe.
buy into commodities
Tinashe, we're gonna have it. Rabbit
that
hole
have
on this.
an extreme volatility. Like the amount of volatility in commodities. That's your advice. I'm shocked.
No, I'm not. That's not my advice.
Yeah,
by the
that's
way.
your
We're
advice.
ending this discussion.
And
we're
it's not
moving
like
on.
I'm the first person to
Tinashe,
tell you about risk.
We're gonna have a
valued
rabbit hole.
risk.
We're gonna have a rabbit hole on this, and then we can explore it ad infinitum. But moving on.
There are lots of
Swiftly.
people that will not see the
No,
rabbit
can we move
hole,
on, please?
and they should come out of this understanding that
No, but
it's not just one way.
It's too-
There's a lot of volatility in these markets.
Tinashe, it's
And
too-
while you might be losing today, over a 10-year period, you're better off.
Okay, can we talk about Kotko now?
Yeah, we can.
Right. So Kotko, a favorite of ours on this show, announced that in this year they're gonna make $67 million for the
Zim dollars or US dollars?
US dollars for the entire country's cotton crop. This is a business that used to make $300 million per annum. We used to be one of the biggest cotton producers in the world. What's happened? Where's it all fallen apart?
Well, cotton is a commodity. The price has been coming down over the
But
last...
not to that extent.
No, it has. It's actually very volatile. Lint prices are one of the most volatile in the world.
To the extent that we've lost 80% of our value?
Well, there are Zimbabwean risk, but globally,
Yes.
synthetics has actually been taking over
Fair enough. But
a lot of that market.
how much of our loss of revenue at Kotko has to do with that, and how much has to do with how we've managed the business?
It's how we've managed. That risk should have been taken over by the farmers themselves and not by the taxpayer.
Yeah, so I think it's a failure in policy. I think the subsidies and government interventions over the years have been bad for Kotko. And so instead of adapting, being dynamic, diversifying their portfolio, growing in other ways, perhaps going into manufacturing cloth and industrializing, it basically declined and is where it is today.
Adopting GMOs.
Yeah, they didn't have that option because of the rules and regulations in this part of the world.
They are the government.
Well, Kotko was private. I mean, and for a long time, to be fair, it was one of the most successful
They used to hedge.
privatizations.
They used to hedge their risk. Yeah. And now
Not unlike Dairy Board, but unfortunately, they suffered more.
But going back to his argument, how much of Kotko's success at the time was purely driven by global prices, and how much of it was ingenuity of the Kotko team? It's like platinum prices, right? How much of it is due just to the fact that platinum and gold, all these commodity prices have gone up, and how much of it is the ingenuity of the management teams? We need to separate those. I think this is actually the new normal.
So should we be, as a country, if you're right, as a country, should we even be bothering on something that makes 67 million for the entire country when Apple has just made $100 billion in profit?
Take away the subsidies and it'll be okay.
We'll make more without subsidies?
Yeah. Then the farmer would.
But I think
correctly hedge.
I like that you mentioned Apple, because I think it just puts into proper perspective a lot of the discussion in this part of the world about land and farming and natural resources and how they're important and central to development and growth in this country and economy. Because it's the 21st century and you've got a company that doesn't manufacture anything, that doesn't own any land or natural resources, that's just in the business of designing and marketing products, that's made $100 billion in a year. That's the nature of the world that we live in today. And I think that we need to be alive to that and adapt to that. And I think that the focus that we have in this part of the world on natural resources, on land and farming is misplaced, because that's not where wealth is being created. Wealth is being created through knowledge, through technology and innovation. And if we don't have a seat at that table, we're going to be poor for the foreseeable future.
I look at it differently. My issue is the subsidies. So I don't care if you're a farmer, and I don't care if you're in ICT. But the problem I have is when government takes all our resources and puts them in a particular sector. So it could be ICT. I would still have a problem with it, right? So if you have a government that then directs all its resources towards ICT to the detriment of all the other sectors, I'll still have a problem.
Yeah, but I think that you, I hear you, but I think you're to some extent you're missing my point. I think if we had the best policies possible for farming and for mining and for anything involving natural resources, that would not actually lead us to transformation in terms of per capita income. It will not lead us into transformation from being a third world developing country to a first world developed country. That's not how we're going to get there. So I don't think there's a conversation around that at all.
In fairness, with subsidies, without subsidies, is Kotko ever going to make $100 billion?
Yeah. If they go into synthetics and all the other things. If
they stop being Kotko, if they stop being a company that grows...
Silo, they should not be in a silo. We need to see them.
If they go into...
So you can mix. So
into the knowledge economy.
You are big in fabric. You could mix between synthetic and cotton and come up with all sorts of things.
I mean, what you're talking about is going to the knowledge economy, technology, new ways of doing things, doing new things.
Yeah.
Which is
why education is important. And I think that's an important discussion in the next segment.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I seem to have lost track of time, and I'm glad that somebody's got their head screwed on right. Give us a couple of minutes. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Yeah, I couldn't get any more ice balls, and they're shriveling.
Looks like yours have shriveled.
They have. Might have to find an alternative. But I see you guys have topped up your drinks.
No, I haven't actually.
So you're not even drinking?
No, I am. It's that good.
Oh, you're getting rather agitated in the last episode.
Bouncing off the walls, kind of agitated.
No more sugar for this guy. Okay, so let's move on from inflation. As you know, I'm always very passionate about education. So we are told that schools are opening again by the 7th of February.
Which is fantastic news.
But only for 45 days.
How long should they be open?
Well, they're supposed to be open for usually about 3 months, right? So you go mid-January, mid-February, mid-March, mid-April. 3 months times about 22, so 66, 70 days is a normal term. But we're coming from 2 years of no school, and we're only opening for 45 days. So soon, after the exams have been written, we've got no grade 7 results. So how are the kids going to go to Form 1? How are they going to choose which kids go where? I believe the A-levels are still being written. O-levels might be done now. Seems a bit of a mess to me. I'm not quite sure how it's actually going to work. The schools themselves are in terrible financial positions because they haven't really collected revenue for a couple of years, or not consistently, but their costs haven't gone away. Their maintenance bills.
But there's other bigger problem that even if the schools were to open, the teachers are threatening us, right?
Right. And the government itself has said it's short of 40,000 teachers. And they've got a plan to hire 10,000 this term.
So, okay. I don't think whining is interesting. So, what?
It is, actually.
Perhaps we could be constructive and take an interesting perspective. If you had a blank sheet of paper, right? If you were put in charge of the government's
we agree on this.
education
Privatize.
portfolio, what would you do? And how would you like
Literally
unpack it for us? Like, what would you do?
community schools.
We agree on this 100%.
Oh, but what would you do with the existing government-owned schools?
Give them to the communities.
Give them to the communities. That's
For nothing?
No, that's the donation.
Wait a
right?
minute, who's the government?
It's the people.
So what do you mean for nothing?
But how would you know whether the people you're giving it to have skin in the game if they don't have to pony up a penny
It's
to get all the infrastructure?
It's their community. It's their kids. It's a community asset.
Yeah.
I don't know, because if you think about
It will actually turn out to be cheaper,
If
by
you-
the way, because you'll be able to recruit more.
I think your solution is overly simplistic, because if you think about the current education infrastructure today, what you'll find is there are a lot of Group A schools, right? That if you look at the demographic, no, they still
They don't
Group A
call, they don't
schools.
call that anymore.
Oh, they don't use that nomenclature anymore for whatever reason. But those schools have a certain level of infrastructure that would ideally suit a certain demographic, but because of the way they've been badly run over the last few decades, the demographic that's actually attending those schools is very different. Okay, so if you gave a government-owned school in a low-density suburb like Borodale to the community, who are you actually giving it to? Because the kids who are going to that school today are not from that community.
But are you overthinking this? My counter-example to your example is can you think of a single community in this country that does not have a functional place to buy alcohol?
Or golf course.
No, there's communities that can't afford a golf course.
Yeah.
So they don't have
That's
one.
a really bad example.
But
No. The point is the community can own a golf course. Right?
But every community you and I can think of has figured out how to make alcohol affordable to its members. So why do we think they can't run a school?
But to answer your question directly, what should actually happen? Because the bottleneck right now, why Bordeaux Primary School cannot expand? Because ideally, if it was in the community's hands, it will probably be 10 times the size it is today. Because everybody would want to send their kids to Bordeaux Primary School.
And participate in its governance.
Yes, but the problem right now that
everybody who lives in Bordeaux.
No, everybody, even those who live in high-density areas, would like to send their kids to Bordeaux.
Isn't that the antithesis of community schooling?
No,
because surely people
the ownership
in high density are a separate community that should run separate schools.
Let me make his point.
The ownership is with the community, but it's open to anyone.
But the community can make that choice.
The community can make that choice.
Whether to open it or not.
Or not. Yeah, but then ideally what they want to do is to reduce the cost substantially.
In fact,
is it about cost reduction or is it about catering to the community what it needs?
I've got a good example for you. You and I are both members of a certain sports club in this town that was nearly bankrupt a decade ago and then outsourced itself and got a rental, returned to viability, and then closed itself to new membership, but maintained a model that allowed the newcomers to subsidize the old members. And we did not need the government to help us decide this. We now drink at cheaper than Bombi Stombi prices in a very nice pub, courtesy of the people actually coming from across town.
So eventually, that's what you want. So right now, the bottleneck is everything has to be approved by the ministry. So if Bordeaux Primary School wants to increase its size by 10 times, the ministry will say, no, you cannot. That's number one. Number two, the ministry will tell them the number of teachers per student ratio. Now, if you're in Bordeaux, what you would prefer is 1 per 20. Now, the ministry will tell you, no, it's going to be
1 per 60.
1 per 60, whatever it is. There are these guidelines that you have to adhere to. So if you open it up to the community just owns the school, right? But the students can come from everywhere. In fact, that's the competition you would want, because what's going to happen is those that live in high density areas are going to start developing their schools because they are now in direct competition with Bordeaux Primary School.
And they're empowered to make the relevant decisions over their school. So going to our sports club example and applying it to Bordeaux, right? So if the Bordeaux community decides they want 1 to 20, but hey, there's people from across town that don't mind 1 to 50. If they run their school and they've got control of that decision, they can actually say, if you have a Bordeaux address, you're in these 2 special classes that only have 20 kids. If you have any other address, you're in the Povo classes and there's 50 kids.
And no, I think what would happen,
I don't think that model
would work. What would happen is Bordeaux will start taking over the community schools in the high density areas. Because they're really good. They are attracting the best teachers, best admin. And then what they will do is they will say, hey, this is actually profitable for us. And what people really want is the name.
It's the outcomes, not the name.
Yeah, the outcome. But the outcome is with the brand, Bordeaux Primary School. So why don't we take that name
to
Heathcliff, right? And although you have more students, but it's according to our curricula and our way of doing things. So that's the admin. And the point is, and this is where government misses the point totally, is that this is already happening, but it's already happening at a vastly expensive cost. So if you look at all the schools that have come up in the low density areas, they're very expensive. And their facilities are nowhere near Bordeaux Primary School, right? So is government is it not in their best interest to open it up to the community? You know, they have playgrounds. A lot of the schools that we're seeing, they don't have playgrounds. They don't have swimming pools. They don't have hockey grounds. They don't have any sporting activity whatsoever.
But why should they? So they've got all this amazing
infrastructure.
Yeah. Why should they just gifted to the community? Why shouldn't the community pay for it?
The community is the government. Okay, well, look, you can have a paying model or whatever, but transfer.
Because I believe in skin in the game, right? I think if you pay for something, you're much more likely to have an interest in it than
If
something
they
that
don't do anything, the school
and,
will...
and the analogy I'll use is land reform, right? A whole bunch of people got land for free and have done nothing with it. Yes, there are some farmers who are extremely productive and are making a positive contribution in the agricultural sector, but there's a lot of land out there that is not productive, that is not making a positive contribution.
I think there's nothing wrong with your thinking, right? I grew up Anglican. The Anglican Church runs on a similar-ish model. So if you guys have a local parish in the Anglican Church, you can remain Anglican as long as, okay, you follow the rules of the big church, but you must send what's called assessments monthly to the center. So you must pay to remain affiliated. And I think there's nothing wrong with that. And I don't think communities would have a problem with that. If there's
It can't be a freebie.
Yeah, and
No,
that's
it's
fine.
not a freebie. I don't
fine,
know why
but-
you would consider
but-
it a freebie.
No, because you guys said you must just give it to the community.
No, the ownership must come back. And
You're
the
being like
running-
international.
No, I'm not being pedantic.
No, and I think we should give him that platform, and then we actually articulate
Because
it.
you want your own platform.
No, until we exhaust it. But so when you look at the buildings were always done by the kids, right?
You mean the parents?
By the parents, right? It's
How
always
is
the
he the
parents.
sober one?
The parents'
How?
association. It's the parents'
No more sugar for this
association
guy.
that usually does the building. The thing that central government does right now is
Teacher
provision
salaries.
of the teacher's salary. They're supposed to provide for the textbooks,
They
but they don't.
They're
Right?
supposed to provide
That is central
stationery and
government.
stuff.
They don't. But if you look at the desk,
Look, it's not a
everything
secret.
was done
Government
by-
schools are failing. Okay, I'm with you.
What we're actually saying is
but tell me-
government didn't pay anything.
Are private sports clubs failing? No.
No,
Are private churches failing?
no,
No. Every community in this country has numerous numbers of churches at work. They have pubs and bars at work. Everything else that the communities are running works and is thriving. So why not let the communities run the schools?
And then the burden of salaries goes to the community.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That
so
makes
why wouldn't you agree to that? In fact, the argument to your
no.
point is
I like
what
the
did
argument.
government
I
pay?
just
What-
don't like
what
the way
did-
you guys are framing it.
No, what did the government pay? Except maybe the land.
No. So
And I think it's the
land came from city council.
City council is the one that actually provided the land. So what did government actually provide?
no. I think we are, for the most part, in agreement. I think it's just
sometimes.
it's a framing problem that I have with the way you guys are saying give it to the community. I would prefer to use
Send it to
to express it as privatize. Yeah, because when you privatize, you actually go to a particular
That was the
school.
first thing he said.
Yeah, but then you kept repeating ad nauseum this
No,
expression, give it to the community.
Because
you shouldn't
you-
give people things.
Okay.
You
Well,
must
what you're saying
privatize.
is that the community already owned the school anyway, because they paid for it and they donated it to government. Or they didn't even donate, but government assumes some sort of responsibility, which it actually doesn't have. I know from my primary school that they expand continuously the classrooms, and government does not in any way pay for that. Desks and things like
They don't
that.
even pay for the bus.
They don't.
They don't pay for
Buses
nothing.
are paid for by the Parents Association. So I thought your argument was going to be in the rural areas.
But it doesn't matter. Even in the rural areas.
Exactly.
People get drunk in the rural areas. There are churches
Yeah.
in the rural areas. It works.
It actually does work.
One last thing that I just found quite interesting in the news this week.
Just a point.
No more sugar for you.
Okay, so you know the most significant thing that would happen if government were to do that, that's 100,000 to about 150,000 people that will be off
government payroll.
government payroll.
And paid by
Why
the
does
community.
government want them on their payroll anyway?
Exactly.
Who knows? In the news this week, interesting thing. Stats SA, the Zimstat of South Africa, is changing their.
Sounds like something
They're
they don't say.
changing. They're changing the formula for calculating inflation in South Africa. And guess what the biggest change in the basket is?
Alcohol.
Alcohol. It's increased its weighting by 0.44%, nearly 0.5%. So you see,
Lots
you're
of
getting left
drunkards.
out. You're getting
Lots of
left out.
drunkards.
They've decided that
So I'm paying for.
you're not
everyone
paying for
else's
them.
No, it's just an important part of the CPI number.
Interest rates. The interest rate is linked to the inflation rate.
Yes, so you should drink.
So I end up having to pay a higher interest rate because you.
You should drink.
No.
You might actually be happier. And in parting,
Said,
read something interesting last week on ZFN actually, from Bill Murray, a US actor. The best way to teach your kids about taxes is eating 30% of their ice cream. It's been lovely having you along. As usual, don't take us too seriously. We have no idea what we're talking about.
Especially this one on sugar.
We're just trying to inspire some thoughts and some conversations. And if we do inspire thoughts and conversations, be sure to have them with yours, especially if you've got access to people that make important decisions. Let them start thinking about some of these issues and how they affect you and I. Otherwise, COVID is real. Stay safe. Have a nice weekend. Be good. If you can't be good at it.